Story 1. The Watcher of the Woods. I never believed in the supernatural until that fateful night in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I had heard rumors about the Mothman, whispers of an eerie creature with glowing red eyes and massive wings, but I never thought it was anything more than folklore. That is, until I had my own terrifying encounter. It was a cold, crisp evening when I decided to take a drive out into the woods near the TNT area, an old munitions site that had been abandoned for decades. I had heard stories of strange sightings and odd occurrences in the area, but I was determined to see it for myself. I didn't expect much, just a few strange noises, maybe, or a rustling in the trees. As I parked my car near an old dirt road, the woods were eerily quiet. No birds chirped, no wind rustled the leaves. Just an unsettling stillness. My headlights cast long shadows across the forest floor, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I stepped out of the car, my flashlight cutting through the dark, and walked toward the old munitions bunkers. It was then that I noticed something strange. There, in the distance, about 50 yards away, stood a figure. At first, I thought it was a person, but the silhouette seemed wrong. Too tall, too broad. As I moved closer, the figure moved too, an unnatural, jerky movement that made my blood run cold. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The thing in the distance was enormous, its wings unfurled, stretching far beyond its body. It was Mothman. The creature's glowing red eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I could feel the weight of its gaze as if it was peering into my very soul. The air grew thick and heavy, and I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Suddenly, the Mothman flapped its wings, the sound like a gust of wind, but it was far louder, like the roar of a jet engine. I stumbled backward, terrified, but the creature didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. The fear in my chest grew, and I turned to run. But before I could take a single step, I felt a heavy pressure on my chest, as if the air itself was pushing me down. I managed to break free, running to my car and jumping in. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the Mothman flying after me. But the woods were empty, save for the flickering headlights of my car. I never went back to the TNT area after that night. I don't know what the Mothman wanted or why it was there, but I know it was real, and it was watching me. Story 2. The Omen on Silver Bridge. I'll never forget the night I saw Mothman on the Silver Bridge. It was December 15th, 1967, the night the bridge collapsed into the Ohio River, killing 46 people. But before that tragic event, something far more terrifying happened. I was a young man at the time, living in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. I had just finished a late shift at the local diner and was heading home when I decided to drive across the Silver Bridge. The night was foggy, and the river beneath the bridge was barely visible, but I could make out the faint outline of the bridge in the dim light. As I crossed the bridge, something caught my eye. A figure standing at the edge of the span, near the center of the bridge. At first, I thought it was a person, but as I got closer, I realized it was much more than that. The figure was huge, far taller than any man, and its wings spread wide, blocking out the faint light of the street lamps. Its eyes were blood red, glowing like two coals in the darkness. It was Mothman. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The creature didn't move, just stood there, watching me with its unblinking eyes. I could feel the weight of its gaze, a deep, suffocating pressure that seemed to press down on my chest. I tried to back up, but the car wouldn't move. It was like the air itself had thickened, trapping me in place. For what felt like an eternity, I stared at the creature, unable to look away. I could see the massive, leathery wings twitching, as if the creature was preparing to take flight. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the Mothman took off, its wings beating the air with an eerie, unnatural sound. I could hear the rush of wind as it soared into the night sky, vanishing into the fog. I don't know what happened next, but I remember hearing a loud, grinding noise, followed by the sound of metal snapping. The bridge began to shake, and I saw the lights of other cars around me flickering. Then, With a deafening roar, the silver bridge collapsed into the river below. I barely made it out of my car in time. I ran, not looking back, but all I could hear in my mind was the sound of Mothman's wings and the horrific crash of the bridge falling apart. To this day, I wonder if Mothman was a harbinger of that disaster. Was it trying to warn us, or was it simply waiting for the right moment to make its appearance? I'll never know, but I can't help but think that the creature I saw that night had something to do with the tragedy that followed. Story 3. The Shadow in the Forest. It was the early autumn of 2006 when I encountered Mothman in the woods near my home in Point Pleasant. I had always been a skeptic of paranormal stories, especially the ones surrounding Mothman. But what happened that night changed my life forever. I had been hiking alone, something I did often to clear my mind. The woods were thick, the trees twisting together like they were trying to suffocate the daylight. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I was making my way through the woods when I heard a rustling noise behind me. At first, I thought it was a deer or some other animal, but the sound was too heavy, too deliberate. I stopped, my heart pounding in my chest, and looked around. That's when I saw it, a pair of glowing red eyes staring at me from the darkness between the trees. They were too high off the ground to be a person. They were enormous, unblinking, and they pierced through the shadows like two burning embers. I froze, unsure of what to do. Then, I saw it move. The creature stepped out from behind the trees, revealing its full form. It was taller than any man I had ever seen, with dark, leathery wings that stretched out wide. Its body was covered in dark, matted fur, and its eyes, those terrible, glowing eyes, locked onto mine. I felt a surge of terror like I had never known. My legs refused to move, and for a moment, I thought I might faint. The creature didn't make a sound, didn't move toward me, but its presence was overwhelming. I could feel the air growing thick, heavy with something I couldn't explain. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, Mothman took off, launching itself into the air with a single, powerful flap of its wings. The sound was deafening, like a giant gust of wind, and I could feel the pressure of its flight push me back. I ran, blindly, stumbling through the woods until I reached the edge of the forest. I don't remember much of the rest of the night, only that I somehow made it back to my car, terrified, shaken, and deeply disturbed. I've never gone back to those woods, and to this day, I can't shake the feeling that Mothman is still out there, waiting, watching.